Clint, I saw that movie Magic Mike.
Oh, are you serious? You watched that movie?
I didn't watch, I didn't watch the whole thing. But,
okay.
but it was
just
one
the
of
good
the
parts.
Here
we go.
You got one life, for crying out loud. You might as well just give it all you got.
The Deej, Dan Jordan.
Your daily dose of reality. Your daily dose of the Deej.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I need my daily dose of the Deej.
I make the news. I don't watch the news. I'm a leader.
The Sales Energizer, Dan Jordan.
Listen, don't worry how to sell, baby. Worry about why people buy. And it's fun.
You don't need a 5-hour energy. All you need is the Sales Energizer.
Just when I think it's not going to be as fun as the one before, each one gets successfully better. Success. What's the word I'm looking for? What's it going to take to get you into this car today, huh?
And now, please welcome the Sales Energizer, Dan Jordan.
Boom!
That's exactly it. Do that. Let's do that. I went a little early today with my arms up. I've been sitting around here for
Hey,
too long.
it's never too early to get the arms in the air and start feeling good, baby.
It's never, I was at a networking meeting. I haven't done that in a long time, but somebody asked me to be in for him because he couldn't make it that day, today. And so they mentioned me and they said, oh, here's a guest and he'll be talking for whatever. And they just mentioned my name and without even thinking about it, they mentioned my name. I stood up and put my arms in the air. But it totally changed the vibe of the whole place.
Yes.
It was amazing. I'm in the mood to talk, so let me just go for a little while. So,
It's your show.
If you're watching out there, just stick around. It's going to get better, but I got something to say right now. So I was in Vegas last week. I work in a convention. One of my clients, they had a booth, and I said, actually, interaction, which was awesome. They finally hit the point where I realized that their product could stand up with the best of them. So we went and we did this thing. It was awesome, and I think we're being attacked. I got one of those things that are on top of schools, those sirens. It's going around every once in a while.
Awesome. You know what? This is a scintillating live video. So let's go.
So so I'm there and I'm working. It's a big convention and there's all that stuff. People and oh my gosh, the whole sales energizer thing, totally on point. Like they've never seen. Even now, people think they're all, crazy and new wave and all that stuff. They just are. Everybody's still kind of staunchy and buttoned up and not right. Man, the whole sales energizer thing just works in the audience out there in the real world.
Well, there's just something about someone being introduced and then they, the crowd should be the ones doing this, right? And eventually they'll get there. Right. But I'm sure once you did that, people are like, oh, maybe I should be doing this too. Yeah, okay, all right. We talked about this. You feel better when you do it.
Yeah.
And it's become a trademark for you. And so, why not? But I do like the fact that when you do these things, people don't, it's not just antics and clown cars and you do bring value, you do bring intelligence to folks.
Yeah, we try to. We try to bring some intelligence in there. But really the mark of intelligence is bringing people on your show that are just a little bit smarter than you. And we're lucky enough to have someone like that today. I met this guy and he told me a story and I never forgot it. And I try to use it as much as I can. And what it is that he moved here from another country and he has one of those awesome accents.
Yeah.
And that's his thing. That's how he meets people, but he uses it to his advantage. And I said, this is the type of guy that I need to know that's going to use something as small as that, a difference, to meet more people and to get business and start a whole new life in a new country. And so now you get a chance to meet him. So without any further ado, and with as much fanfare as we can provide, please help me welcome my good friend, Mr. Malcolm Evans.
Hey!
Yes. I mean, you look like someone was about to shoot you. Arms in the air. You waited until the rifle was right on you.
Hey, I do have history, Dan. Okay, so, yeah, I just listening back there. I'm getting into the mood of this, and I so relate about what you're saying about shows and how things. Look, I'm going to take this jacket off. Okay, I'm stodgy. So
yeah, look at that. It's not often you get to use a word like stodgy. No. So stodgy, you actually used to work with one of the big big corporate enterprises that went out and spent all sorts of money. For most of the audience here are people who are self-employed entrepreneurs, getting things going, just figuring out how to get customers. And we can't really understand or relate to that world that you came from. Explain to us how that world works, because it seems to make no sense.
Well, yeah, it was a big company, and the claim to fame was that they were in more countries than the Catholic Church. But I'd always say it wasn't a big company, rather it was a small government. There was so much politics there, but it was great. Learned a lot along the way, and I think it's just me on the screen here, so I think that's the technology. Yes, it is a different thing, and.
Well, so where did you come and tell your story?
Okay, well, originally, I'm from the south. I'm from South Wales in the UK, and I live in Atlanta. And as you know, I tell people, look, I'm from the south. It's just a different one. But at the age of 16, I set my life's goals. I had two heroes in my life at that time, John Wayne and my dad, and they both instilled this spirit: go west, young man. So apparently I'm not very good at geography, so I ended up in Africa. But I eventually came west, and never wanted to come to America. My dad remembers when a lot of Americans were in Britain in the 40s. He would say there's only three things wrong with the Yanks, as he would say. I'm one of them now, so I can say this. He said they're overpaid, they're oversexed, and they're over here. And that put me off for life.
Okay.
Apparently you can get a lot of mileage with chocolate bars and nylon stockings. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
So I just got this wanderlust from an early age. Want to see the world. Want somebody else to pay for it. And what really opened it up for me was the ability to sell and have a conversation. So, everything that I've done over the years, I lived in 3-4 different countries and traveled the world and wherever. It's always come down to dealing with people. And this is why I'm so passionate about this. Not quite as passionate as the Deej, but we all have aspirations.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Only we want to. I got mocked out a little bit with that last week. They said, well, let me get this straight. You gave yourself your own nickname? Yeah, that's how it works. Well, so you've made the transition to kind of entrepreneurship, and the biggest, when I talk to people, the biggest kind of challenge that they deal with when they make that transition is they no longer have a budget to play with. Mm-hmm. And were you ever in that situation where you had a budget that almost like you had to spend?
Yes, and I was glad that that's over. It was too much temptation. I had well over $2,000 a month to spend on business development, and of course, a lot of that ended up hanging around bars and nice restaurants. So I was putting on weight and so on, and I felt some of these things that were a little bit destructive, for me. So. One of the big things that I did for myself is get fit, get my vitality back. And here I am now, sort of the other, far end of 50. Not on any medicines or
Good for you.
pharmaceuticals, and I feel strong as a bull every day. It might be a little
Yeah.
bull, but it's still a bull,
Yeah, but that's strong. I remember as a kid going to not conventions, but just going to seminars and things. And the old guys there, the Norman Vincent Peales, the Zig
Mm.
Ziglars, everybody was talking about, health is your most important thing. When you're Zig Ziglar writes about, I think, in See You at the Top, about one day he started running and he woke up and he was 55 years old and he realized that he's probably in better shape than most 30-year-olds or kids at the school that he was there just from doing that stuff. And I was thinking, these old guys are just talking about that. And I never paid any mind to it. I realized you get up in your 50s, you realize half the people are on medication for hypertension or this or that, and you don't know what's going on. Was there a specific event that turned you into this, or you just realized, I don't feel good in the morning when I wake up?
Yeah, and we get pivotal moments along the way in our lives and so on. And look, I come from I grew up in a pub. Okay, my family's been in beer forever. There was always good food around. My mother made sure she took care of us with good nutrition and stuff like this. And I got interested in sport at an early age. Played at a high level, very competitive. I ultimately got into coaching in sport, athletics, rugby, and things like this. This moved into business, but it was when I finally walked away for the third time from the corporate lifestyle, the employment, to become an entrepreneur on my again. I made a few sort of decisions about that. I wanted to go back to my home country and see my aging parents, and so I created that. I could work flexibly. I could work from anywhere long before the need to that happened. And my father had been unwell. And as he came out of hospital, I saw his medications that he was taking. And I tried to help him organize them. And he was on multiple things, like 9 or 10 different things a day. And he said to me, whatever you do, keep your wellness. Do not go down this path. And the best way to not be sick is to stay healthy, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that set a hook. And some of the things that I picked up as habits over the years, which I often talk to people about how we build up habits from early age. I made that resolution, and that was over 10 years ago. And I can say my health, wellness, vitality, spirit, everything, my strength is back to where I was in my late 30s, I think.
Yeah, people. I say I've met Malcolm in person. He's got hands; they're like oven mitts. The man is
is that a sign of health or being oversexed? Which
he's an athlete and a big dude. Well, so let me ask you. So you talked about habits and the salespeople that are out there. We tend to fall into those, just doing what everybody else does. I left being a stockbroker. Christone knows this because everybody around me was getting divorced and I didn't want to get divorced. And then I looked, why is everybody getting divorced? And well, there was crazy stuff going on that I thought was just normal. I mean, that's what you do. It's 4:30. Let's go across the street. And there's, a gaggle of people waiting for you for whatever you're doing. And it was just normal. So how does one who wants to stay healthy, how do you coach somebody who wants to stay healthy, to still maintain friendships, but kind of change your habits slightly?
Well, and this is a great question. I was saying to Chris earlier that for whatever reason, I must have had a lot of coffee this morning, but I am surrounded by notes. I'm thinking, right, where to start, and this is my favorite subject. And I've always been a good chess player. And one of the things being in the corporate world, you anticipate what's coming next. what's going on in the marketplaces. You get to understand your customers. And the one, the big difference I say to folks between selling and marketing, selling is it's on the shelf. You need to go out and shift it. Marketing is, what is the customer looking for? What are the changes in their business? What can you build to sell them, to satisfy their needs and allow them to be the good customer, the good supplier to their customers. Now, when I take some of this stuff into the world that's around about people changing, and the change is such a constant. And when we spoke about coming along and sharing, I thank you so much for this, about rewiring your brain for sales. Now, I shared this with somebody yesterday, and they said, "Oh, this is how to tell salespeople to do things better and quicker and faster and so on." And I said, well, to a degree, but there is so much change where it's not only people that are in sales need to understand how they could rewire their brain for sales. It could be the ones that are thrust out of the comfort of the jobs that they're in, or they have something that's going on in their life that is forcing a change. Now, here we are in a time of absolute flux. It's not that these difficult times have been around in the past, but so many people haven't experienced them and don't have the inbuilt resilience to have the coping mechanisms really to say is, look, change is a constant. I can get through this, I can manage it, but I need to dig deep and understand how I react. And, if anyone's got a family or ever like that, as I have, these things become paramount and important, but it's taking a pause and, the shift of the mindset. So, I'm sorry if I'm weaving around a little bit here. Maybe I'm around with a...
No, it's nice talking to an intellectual every once in a while. I'm normally stuck with Chris Stone. But here,
it's a good balance.
All you got to do to sound smart is have an accent anyhow. So, and speak slowly and deliberately. But here's the thing. Do you think some of that, because I often think about that. There's bouts of depression, and salespeople go depression just like regular people. And the difference is the amount of time that you stay in the cloud.
Yeah.
But do you think that perhaps your history or people who are just aware of history seem to do better coping than those who don't? If you take a look at European history and just in the last century, oh my gosh. I mean, like, people, real horror, real tragedy, real worries. They would mock us.
Yeah, and this is great. We all grow up with a set of character traits. We all grow up with things which we like the length of our fingers, the color of our eyes, the color of our hair, even though it changes as we go on. The height and so on. Let's call it DNA. Inside of our personality, we have character traits which we're born with. We can inherit a lot of these, and if you've ever come across people that are stressful and maybe, asthmatics or whatever, that could be because they inherited a lot of stress from their parents. And all of this is, I don't want to get into science and quoting papers and things like this. I want to keep it at a very high level. If we can accept that we're born and we've got a set of survival mechanisms which are going to protect us physically and emotionally as we grow. And what I tell folks that when I was a young kid, I got chubby at a certain age, and it just happened to be the age that I was moving around. My parents were moving around. We grew up in the beer business, as I'd said, pub to pub. I joined a few different new schools from the age of 9 through until the age of 11. And being the new kid and having something to allow people to poke fun at me, I had to find ways of coping. So I maybe adapted some of this, go along to get along, and and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I got my ass kicked a lot, and I learned how to get by, and so. But as I grew out of that. But the habits that I'd learned of maybe being the life and soul of the party, which later on manifested in being the first to the bar, and being the life soul of the party and the last one to go home, and some of the decisions that had come from that later in life didn't serve me. So this is what I learned about unlearning habits and rewiring things. And it starts with introspection. It starts to, what's working for us, what hasn't been working for us. And there are definite signals. And if we transfer this into, a situational thing where, we either get people or ourselves or somebody else can create a bit of anxiety in us. Have we ever had it, Chris or Dan, where something hasn't gone right and it's created a tightness in your chest or on your neck or somewhere? These are normal reactions, but these are fascinating things, because a simple thought, a stimulated, hormones being generated in the body or wherever, chemicals which are converted into some sort of physicality because they've worked with cells and muscles and things like that, which were digging back into some of those survival mechanisms, that fight or flight stuff. Somebody's pressed our button, what's going to happen next? And this can work against us. But by recognizing these things, we can reduce the stresses. Now, how do we translate this into the world of sales or the world where somebody has been forced into a change? And I believe it comes with the recognition of understanding what's going on in ourselves and our environment first, and having the tools and the skills to be able to adapt to that.
Well, so are you saying that those almost physiological responses that happen due to a confluence of events can be controlled, mitigated, and reform yourself from that?
Exactly. And you've seen this guy on the TV, the dog whisperer, the Cesar Millan or wherever.
Oh gosh, years ago. Is he still around? I would have thought he would have been eaten by now. I mean, that guy puts himself in positions. These guys, these are vicious kind of creatures, angry animals.
Absolutely. Some of my point of reference, I got socks that are 40 years old. It's sometimes difficult for me to change or wherever. But what always impresses me about what he did there is, you need to understand, to train a dog, you would need at least to understand, how the dog views the world, how to motivate the dog, and what the behavior of dogs is all about. And for me, that's fascinating, because, we talk about the, sales being the topic for the most part. This is a social thing. Now, if you've got two people in that, let's call it an equation, that sales equation, and the one person on the one side is under pressure, got a big sales number, not hitting it, what's happening, the economy's down, interest rates are up, and all of this stress. Okay, that person is exhibiting stress, almost like giving off pheromones, which the other person feeds off with mirror neurons. If you, it's almost like when you fold your arms, the person you're talking to will, naturally fold their arms. But equally, it works the other way. If the other person isn't comfortable or whatever, it can be put their hands up. I bet you everybody out there is putting their hands up. So if the other side of the equation, the customer you're going along to meet with, or the person that you want to sell your ideas to, you're going on a date, you want to be attractive to that person. But if they are giving off some sort of anxiety or stress, maybe you're going to feed into that. Mm-hmm. So this is what I believe, and I've practiced it many times with a lot of my clients that, by understanding ourselves and having an introspection, we can begin to read the other person. And then we can begin to tune in to maybe some of the things that are going on in their lives. And that can determine the whole sales experience and journey. And
and then they have something to work. Okay, so two things came to mind. First of all, you must be very good at toenail clipping if you have socks that are 40 years old, because there's no way that you don't have holes in those things.
You see how we take an in-depth conversation, and that's the nugget that we pulled out of there, Malcolm.
I love the way his mind works. It's analytical. It's like a machine.
It's a good thing the mirror neurons aren't working with.
Well, the other thing that's bothering me is, I don't know, trait has a T at the end, but is it a silent T? Because you say tray. So
Trey. It is Trey.
It is a silent T.
You Americans are wrong.
Okay,
that's interesting. That's not the first time.
I always like to learn something. Do you find that that your clients are more male or female?
It's about 60-40 between female and specifically middle age.
Okay, so why do you think that is? That are females or women more likely to open up and share those things? I'm just making stuff up, but I just find that interesting.
And there's a ton of things that come into this with regards to, where we are in society, culture, all of these things. It's fascinating with this stuff. The split, it tends to be that the ladies, the females that I work with, have got something other than sales that they're worried about, something other than career that it's on their mind. So and the beauty about what I do is when we deal with the individual, whether it be building a team, whether it be starting a business, wherever it is, it all comes down to the prime movers. And the prime movers are individuals, people with lives which go 360 degrees. They come to work, they go home, they come back to work, they go home. Stresses that are in work get taken home, affect family lives. Stresses that are affecting family lives come to work, and this is why people are disengaged at work. So I've always believed in the 360 degree approach to understanding what drives people and feeding that first. The culture is shifting in companies now because of like the big resignation that happened a couple of years ago. Retention is very expensive in companies. So taking that same sort of mode into other things, it boils down to the same thing. It comes down to the individual, what the set of traits that they have, how their window on the world is, whether they're predisposed to being stressed, whether they're predisposed
and their desire to remedy it.
Right. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's like all of these issues, regardless of gender, are there, right? But I think for the most part, women are more apt to seek out coaching and help as opposed to men. Is that a safe? I mean, the statistics say that, but I think that's where I'll go ahead and say that, Malcolm. You don't have to dance around it anymore.
You nailed it. Now, where does that come from? In the Western world, there's such a thing as machismo. That word was out there.
Oh yeah.
Now.
You mean machismo?
Machismo.
I like machismo. I'm gonna start using machismo. It sounds like a Pokemon character, but anyway.
But now, me as a guy, I observe. I go to parties and things like this, and the ladies come in.
Party guy.
They talk to each other. They say, "Oh, your hair looks lovely." When was the last time I saw you, Dan, and I said, "Dan, your hair looks lovely"?
You have nice shoulders, Dan.
Yeah.
Have I ever told you that?
Yeah. So I always use the line from I think as from Stripes. Chicks dig me because I rarely wear underwear, and when I do, it's usually something pretty exotic. That's that line. But yes. So you were saying that women will do stuff like that, will compliment people.
And they're more inclined to open up and share quicker. And I don't know if you've had it that if you're on the right frequency with a lady, she will tell you how old she is. It never used to be that way. Guys, that's the last thing that's going to come into the conversation. Now, and you're right, Chris. Ladies they're more empathetic with themselves for the most part. They want to solve the problems because they recognize the impact and what the potential outcome is going to be. Guys, sometimes the ego creeps in. And, coming back to where we started this about large corporations, I would see that those three little letters, EGO, were usually at the core of why the culture wasn't right, or maybe sales were down because they get behind ideas and want to keep pushing that instead of listening to what's coming up from the individuals and creating the culture of the organization. And I know sometimes, shareholders and things, being, public companies and wherever like that has an influence, but it always comes back down to that prime mover. And if we take these different things, and this is where it gets fascinating with companies, is that when you want to build teams, putting them together, you can't have too many people that are, warriors, or too many people that are very stickler about the way stuff is done, or a whole bunch of salespeople working in the blooming accounting department. Like, that wouldn't fly, All
right. So okay. So here getting into an area that I'm extremely interested in right now. And do you think that what you're trying to do is possible with companies because they're dealing with so many people? Or is it best to find the individual that is interested in changing, interested in improving, turning from that $70,000 to $80,000 earner to a $300,000 earner? Is it better to work with the company, or is it better work for the individual? For the individual.
Yeah, this is the it's like the chicken and egg.
That whole chicken and egg thing is a bunch of garbage.
Okay.
It's the egg came first. Try to get a chicken. Go to McDonald's and try to get a chicken sandwich for breakfast. Okay. Actually, now that is available.
I remember seeing a quote a long time ago. A guy said, I went to Amazon, I bought an egg, and I bought a chicken. I'll let you know which arrives first.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was funny. At the end, the point of entry into an organization is critical. If you
mean onboarding?
No, I mean organization. If you sometimes you're bringing some change into HR. Maybe they don't want to change. Maybe they're protective against it, or whatever. I'm just saying. But it could be that they believe that they're doing the right thing, but in the mind of the executive at the top, no, he recognizes is change, and it's all about timing then. So it's having a coach, having an entry point where somebody is going to tell you the culture and the dynamics of an organization, whether they really, really want to change. And I've done plenty of cold calling. I've even used the scripts that Dan has shared in the past. And I've always found if I get to a sales manager and I say, hey, I'm in the same world and wherever, do you have a whole bunch of salespeople? Yeah, 10. How many are hitting their numbers? How many are performing? All of them. Statistically impossible. It's like asking everybody in America who's a good driver. They'll all say, "Oh, I am." So yeah, well, no, it doesn't work like that. Now, and I would say and I say these things lightly. We're in the age of change. We're in the age of adaptability. We're almost like the Marines. We need to adapt and overcome, but then that takes resilience or whatever. The biggest dangers I see. With something like AI and stuff coming in, is middle management has the opportunity to be replaced, and in particular, sales management. So I encourage anyone that's out there in the sales world to start to think about the individual more and think about themselves. So often they want to be the coach instead of providing the enablement to grow, and what I call the untapped human capital that they've got, which is potentially the biggest growth factor they could have in their company. They're all about earnings per share and CRM and ROI and stuff like that. Think about that UHC, untapped human capital. I have to be careful because
also known as AHI.
In Britain, we used to have something called UHT, which was like long life milk. So I always end up saying that.
Well, we love acronyms on the show. Acronyms get confetti.
Here's what you have. You have competing interests. So the company wants you to perform only to a certain level. In terms of sales. And I agree with you. The sales manager is almost irrelevant right now because all they're doing is looking at numbers. But sales coaching is very important. So the manager needs to be a coach and help people rise. But the thing is, you can get between $70,000 to $120,000. You could live nicely in a company. They're happy with you. You start earning a little bit more, you get up to 150, and now they want to turn you into one manager, not because they think you can manage people, but because now they can cut your salary a little bit and they could get somebody else in there and all that. So there's competing interests in there. So I think that companies are willing to pay and for training and for help to get you to that $120,000 area right there. Now, if you, the individual, has interests of taking that 70 to 120 and go to 3 to 500, my opinion, you got to pay for that yourself. You have to find the person who wants to succeed and wants to grow and wants to be the best. And that person needs to invest in themselves for their own coach, for their own technology, and for their own growth, and just keep that person with you forever. Always have that little coach with you. And I think that's where you come in. I always get calls right here at 12:30. You know why?
Well, because your phone number's on here like the whole time.
They want to get in first.
But yeah.
Oh, so that reminds me, Dan.
Where you. So, do you find yourself working mostly with individuals or companies?
I would say it's 80-20 with individuals, and that's a lot of my stuff comes through the referral part of it. I love the corporate stuff because if you can help a team thrive, the risk of people getting cut and let go diminishes, and the impact for the company there is that they don't have to spend all their time, effort, finding people on board in them and all the associated costs with that. But conversations that you probably heard me have in the past, that I would ask somebody about, if they own a house. It's quite normal. I said, well, a realtor will tell you need to be spending between 2% and 5% a year on maintenance of that house. So say you've got a $100,000 house for 5% of that, needs to be invested into the upkeep, the maintenance, and so on of it. And then you go and buy a car, and the dealer tells you, look, you need to be spending regular maintenance on this. It could be $100, $150 plus insurance and stuff like that. All right. So, and then I would say, well, what's the biggest asset you've got in your life? Because those two things are liabilities. And often it's a liability. The biggest asset is the individual. And if you're making $100,000 a year, are you spending 5% on yourself to preserve that stream of income? And the answer, unfortunately for many, is no. And what I would always say is that the cost of the solution is always much less than the cost of the problem, because the problem persists. So the ones that recognize it will be the survivors. The ones that take stuff on board, and especially in these times, learn skills that can be used all over the place, that can be used in their current job. And who knows whether that's going to go away, because when you're in a job, it can be taken away. And what are you left with then? You're left with yourself and the ability to sell your services out in the world, or make a decision and go sell a product. Go find a problem and deliver a solution, just like you do so very well. You're at this trade show. There was problems and solutions there, all in that same room. And it's just the effective connectivity of the people on either side of that. So
yeah, and by the way, along those lines, if anybody's out there working conventions and doing things like that, your money is made on the follow-up. And so if you're not, I'm already in touch with these people setting appointments. You gotta stay up with them because they forget you immediately. In terms of sales. Now, Malcolm, you said something before. You said you like the way my brain works. Let me tell you how my brain works. You said that thing about the problem is much less than the solution, or what was it?
The cost of the solution is always less than the cost of the problem.
Okay, so what you want to say is the opposite. It's same thing, but the opposite. You want to say the cost of the problem is much more than the price of the solution. You want to make the problem the expensive thing. Because and in sales,
fear of the outcome, right?
Yeah. If anything in sales, when people are listening to you, if there's any kind of like question in their mind, oh, what does that mean? They're going to sit on there until they could figure it out, and they're not listening to anything else you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible. It's impossible for your mind to think of two things at once. And if you're trying to solve a problem, you're losing the rest of it, which is why it's very important to stop in between each statement that you make and get agreement. That makes sense?
Hell yeah.
That, and you've got to close them after each statement. And if they don't understand, I got my color-coded thing, so
that's not as good as a hell yeah sign.
That hell yes is awesome.
I have glove puppets and everything. So
oh yeah, is that what you?
Man, you see, we waited 42 minutes before we saw a hell yeah sign and some finger puppets. What's that about?
We haven't been doing our job here.
Oh, come on.
When I'm really enthusiastic, Chris, we got a double one there.
Wow.
Oh, look at that.
Oh my God. And all I have is this.
Yes.
So all I have is confetti.
Where's your boxing gloves? We had, remember?
Rick Denley. Yeah.
I spoke with him this week. He's a cool dude.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so then what is your idea? Chris was bringing up your website earlier. So if you were to say, your message, what's the one thing that somebody receives by working with you? How at the end of my sessions with you, where am I?
Okay.
Or what do I have more?
Let's frame this in how I do an introduction with people. We have about 6,000 thoughts a day. The majority of these are working against you. They're based in fear because this is the habits and the perspective that you've grown up with. You make decisions out of fear of loss rather than anticipation of gain and whatever. So what I would say is that living in that state of fear produces stress in the body, produces anxiety in the body, which is diminishing to the body. If you want to change the cycle, live a life that's more relaxing, more attractive in what you put out, you feel happier. And bearing in mind this whole thing of mirror neurons and pheromones and so on, in the world of sales, it is always, I've believed, about perception of risk and risk mitigation. So if you demonstrate confidence, a safe pair of hands in the world of sales, that helps the customer's sort of fear of, am I making the right decision? How am I going to be judged? Am I going to get in trouble for making this decision? Am I going to get criticized? Am I going to get scammed? Am I going to get whatever? These are bad words. So it all comes down to shaping those thoughts to move more towards thoughts that benefit us and are self-serving, rather than thoughts and thought process which are not serving us, creating anxiety and stress and so on. So hopefully that positioned it.
So I'll be able to basically live a better life.
Well, if we get into the science and the statistics, you can probably sell more, you can probably be happier, you can live longer. Every time you get stressed, on the end of our strings of chromosomes, we've got little furry, hairy things, and they're called telomeres. And these are like the end of a lace. There's something to stop it fraying. Every time you're getting stressed and anxious and you're in that fight or flight for long condition, those hairs are getting a little bit shorter and shorter and shorter. So just like smoking, if you want to take minutes and hours off your life, live in the world of stress. If you want to live longer, you want to live a richer, more vital life, show up better in front of everybody, and mirror, project those correct sort of feelings and neurons out into the world that others reflect back to you. Get in, and shift the balance in that 6,000 thoughts from ones that serve you more.
I mean, you sound like the smartest man in America, doesn't he, Chris Stone?
You're definitely the smartest person on our screen right now.
I know, because I'm still there with the hairy ends of the chromosome.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense. If you are in sales and your mindset is to serve yourself, you're outside of the batter's box, man. And you're going, you may be able to sell more initially, but in the long term for your life, boy, there's just nothing, there's no better feeling than helping somebody. Yeah. And if you have the mindset that I'm going to help somebody today, I'm going to make a friend today, I'm going to do something for someone else today, you're going to feel awesome about it. I mean, you're going to end up doing stuff for yourself. It's just kind of like that just happens. But the guy in the center of the screen always says, if you want to be a better salesperson, first be a better person.
And by the way, thank you, Chris. But that is being that better person is up to you. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. You decide what a better person is for you. But what it does, I really, I sound like a big conceited guy, but I push away stuff I'll get emails pretty regularly. So I got an email yesterday, someone who wants to get together and talk about something, who I met a couple of years ago doing a presentation. And you never know. And when you do something good, the point is when you do something good, you never really know. And he was saying, you gave us some ideas on how to get other businesses and actually, it was one. You know how, Chris Stone, when I'm doing a presentation, sometimes I'll just pick up the phone and say, "Give me a number," and I'll just cold call somebody right.
The first time I met you, you did that at our EMC.
So I called somebody, and he said, "Call this number and see if they want to sell their business, whatever." Anyway, he eventually made a deal there. He actually bought somebody's business that I cold called in front of the group. And then since then, he made a couple more acquisitions. And so he has some questions on it, whatever. But he went on and on thanking me for something that I didn't even remember doing. But that energy was out there. And they passed it along to something else. And so last week at Toastmasters, there's always a theme for the meeting. And this theme was volunteerism. And so they asked everybody, what's your favorite volunteering thing? What is yours, Chris Stone? What's like your benefit thing?
Oh, the food pantry here in Lawrenceville. Pantry?
Sure. What about you, Malcolm?
Building schools.
You don't have to get all scientific on us. Just make something.
Yeah. Building schools for kids in Africa.
Yeah,
awesome.
Everybody has their thing. So mine. I was thinking, what I do, because I don't really belong to any kind of group things. I've done a little stuff, but what I do always consistently is when I walk into a store, a supermarket, or walk out of store, and I see trash, I pick it up. Like that's my thing. I throw out trash. Most of the time, nobody sees, nobody knows, anything. But every once in a while, somebody sees and takes the initiative to notice and say something to me. And I know in my head, they're not just saying something to me. What they're also saying is they're resolving to do that too somewhere else. And so you never know.
I'm going to jump in here, and I'm a big believer in the old wisdom, and my dad would always say, the most gratifying thing you can do in a day is put a smile on somebody else's face.
Mm.
And it makes us feel good about that. And look, what's the shame in doing something, even if it's selfish for yourself, if it's spreading good in the world? And I'll have a sort of shameless little plug here that I've always got lots of little things on the go. How many do you remember sayings from your parents that grew up that have lasted with you? Little snippets of wisdom. Maybe they picked it up from their parents.
Are you kidding me? I got a whole chapter on papa-isms.
Yeah,
here it comes.
Yeah. Well, I started throwing this together, and I put this little project going, and they said, "What?" People still stop and laugh when I talk about some of the things my dad used to say.
Oh yeah.
And it keeps his memory alive. And it's what we do every day. And the one thing that I would say is, if we hear of people in jobs, in professions, in organizations that are not fulfilled. They're only engaged 40% of the day. They don't come home happy. I'd say sit and have a bit of reflection. Whatever we believe, whatever we're going to be doing, it's got to be rewarding. God didn't put us on earth to be unhappy or whatever. Well, not for too long. At least give us the creativity to be able to, find our way out of it and find the things that we want to do. So ask yourself, anyone that's listening out there, is what you're doing, does it, at the end of the day, I've learned something, I've accomplished something. I still do it almost every other day. When I get up in the morning, I say, God, give me enough time today to do what you want me to do.
Yeah.
And I go to bed every night and I'm exhausted. I give gratitude for what's happened during the day. And it's not about whether I've increased my material worth. It's whether I've made an impact along the way, because the good will come back. And
That's right.
Starts with us being comfortable in ourselves, being happy in ourselves, being good parents, being good partners, being good employees, living up to our morals. And this starts, I always believe, with the quality of those 6,000 thoughts, because it all emanates out from there.
So how does somebody get a hold of you, Malcolm?
I've got this light that shines up into the night with a big M in it. I got it from this 60s TV show. Anyway, I'm joking. They can find me at mycoachmalcolm.com, or they can, to make it easy, if they go to stress.flowtrack, FLOWTRCK.me. My initial.
Watch the magic of Chris Stone. I know you think he's just standing there looking pretty, but he, on the back end, you have look at this. The whole thing goes crazy. Here's one of my dad's sayings: better to live free in a cave than as a slave in a mansion. That guy, I tell you what, that's good, huh?
I think it's good stuff. Yeah.
Being poor is worse than being ashamed that people know that you are. People will just not try to get out of their own way because they're embarrassed to let people know that they're in trouble.
Yeah. And,
go ahead and let it out there, and then you can help it. Well, I am so grateful to have had you, Malcolm, on this show. We tried for 2 weeks, but you wimped out on us last week. Oh, it was me that canceled.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Okay.
That's a bad thought of the 6,000 you have. So you've got to,
And do you see how well I flowed through that? I wasn't stressed.
Yes, that's right.
Didn't even blink.
I would say to anyone, I so appreciate the both of you for allowing me to, to share some of my caffeine-fueled thoughts. I've come from a background that's very analytical. Come from engineering and moved all the way through this, and it comes down to processes and understanding how people think. This stuff isn't difficult. We can live better lives. We can live more fulfilling. We can get more success. We can handle change a lot different. It costs nothing to talk to me. Starts off with, we'll go to that website there, stress.flowtrack.me, and it all begins there. And if I'm not the right person, I know plenty of people that could be, and it's let's all do some good in the world, because ultimately society needs us. And so I don't want to get too romantic about all of this stuff,
I'm listening to you. Listening to your voice, it's like poetry. It's like a little ballet going on.
And I would say to anybody that, look, to get the mindset that life happens from you. It doesn't happen to you. Okay? It's happening from us. We should be creating impact every day, and it's in our control. We have the ability. It starts up here and it ends up here. Okay, get your mind right, get your thoughts right, your body will follow, your vitality will follow, people will attract or come towards you because you are attractive. You prove it, Dan. You're jumping around, and you do great.
That's all the drugs. That's what that is. Malcolm, I think you're awesome, and so does Mal J. Smith. And I appreciate all that you've given to me, not really necessarily for the show as much as you've done in my life. You've just been a stalwart of humanity and graciousness and wisdom. And so I appreciate you as a person.
Well, thank you so much, and I will take it.
Just take it. You don't even need to reciprocate.
No, I come from a small village, and if you popped your head up, you would go in trouble if you bragged or whatever. But now I'm glad to say I'm the most modest man I know. So
there you go.
Now, I blush more now, Dan. You know that.
Chris Stone, once again, you manage, and look. Have you noticed what he has in the background with the Dan Jordan thing in there? Look at that.
It's incredible. He's
modestly, he's as good as they get in the business, and all those people that you're coaching, these big time people in their industries, when they want to make their own podcasts, you got one guy to send them to, and that's Chris Stone. And for all you people watching out there now or in the future, know that you have a job, and it's your moral duty to make the place a little bit better after having you here than before. And sometimes it's as easy as a smile. So you guys are the best. I'm the Deej. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Go get them today.
Go get them.